Run, why aren't you running anymore? Lin Hao proudly looked at Zhou Hui, embraced a beautiful girl and said, Xiao Zhu, is this your former boyfriend? Brother Hao, don't insult me. A poor bastard who can't even afford 500 yuan wants to chase after me. Liu Zhu nestled into Lin Hao's embrace and disdainfully rolled her eyes. You're still not peeing to take care of yourself. A toad wanting to eat swan meat. When Zhou Hui heard this, he secretly clenched his teeth. His family's condition was not good, so 500 was already an astronomical sum to him. In order to gather money for Liu Zhu, he would eat only one meal a day, and he would not even be full. Not only did she not feel touched, she actually said that Lin Hao was a poor man, that he was a toad that wanted to eat the flesh of a swan. Lin Hao smiled coyly as he walked in front of Zhou Hui and took out a stack of red notes from his pocket. Today, I'll pity you and take it to find someone to stand on the street. Saying that, he took the money and slapped Zhou Hui's face. Without even thinking about it, Zhou Hui raised his hand to block it. His eyes darkened as he stared at Zhou Hui and said, If you have money, why don't you go and cure your retarded mind first? You are seeing courting death, call me. Following Lin Hao's order, the surrounding lackeys immediately began to punch and kick Zhou Hui. Lin Hao was still not satisfied as he hugged Liu Zhu and said fiercely, Hit him for me, hit him in the head, I want him to become retarded. Zhou Hui protected his head with everything he had and endured the rain of fists. He did not make a sound, but his eyes were blood red, and the group of people continued until Chief Song Qian passed by them. Before Lin Hao left, he had even purposely bumped into Zhou Hui. Pauper, remember, poverty is the key to becoming retarded. Zhou Hui, what's going on? Song Qian shouted from nearby. Brother Hao? Wang Bin's face changed as he whispered into Lin Hao's ears. Song Qian's father is a shareholder in the company if we offend her. Do I need you to tell me? Lin Hao spat on the ground in a bad mood. A beautiful lady like her, how did she fall for that poor bastard? No vision. Lin Hao then smiled at Song Qian and left with his people. Did they bully you again? Song Qian hurried over, reaching out to support Zhou Hui, but he was stopped. No, Zhou Hui denied, I was not careful. What ability did he have to rely on a woman? Sooner or later, he would have to use his own methods to find her. Song Qian sighed. This Zhou Hui was not bad and smart, but stubborn, and even if he was bullied, he would not say anything. Originally, he wanted to tell him that the salary that had been advanced this month was not enough, and maybe he would need to return some to the company, but looking at the situation now, he had to be even slower. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, Zhou Hui suddenly said, Sister Song, tell me the money that you need, I will make up for it tomorrow, thank you. With that, without waiting for Song Qian to speak, Zhou Hui left with a limp. Money? It was seeing money again. Zhou Hui punched and kicked the big tree in the company's small garden. Do you really think that money is something you picked up? Ding! The super money picking system has been activated. Zhou Hui was stunned. Money picking system. Ding! The system sounded again. If money is found, do you want to start navigation? Zhou Hui replied without the slightest hesitation, open. An image that resembled a mobile phone's navigation software appeared in Zhou Hui's mind. A red dot of light flickered on the navigation screen, and the closest point was near the back door of the company. Zhou Hui followed the navigation route with extreme nervousness as he searched for it. The closer he got to the dot of light, the more nervous he became. In the end, Zhou Hui stopped in front of the trees outside the back door of the company. After looking around, Zhou Hui quickly found a black plastic bag. Opening up the plastic bag, Zhou Hui was startled. His throat tightened and his heart started pounding. Looking at the new bills inside the plastic bag, there were at least 300,000 yuan. He was rich. The money-picking system was real. Ding, the host has spent all of his belongings within 2 hours, thus obtaining an attribute lottery chance and expanding his navigation area. In other words, would there be more money? What if it doesn't? Ding, host lifespan will be reduced by 50% if you don't spend all of your valuables within 2 hours. Half-life. Isn't this way too much? But after some careful thought with the money-picking system, how could he worry about not having enough to spend? Furthermore, he could draw the lottery. Since that's the case, then let's just spend it with all we have. He took out his cell phone and called his best friend, Stupid Liu, asking him to go straight to the city's best shopping mall, Riverside Building. In the past, he was poor and everyone hated him, only the Stupid Liu was good to him. Not long after, the Stupid Liu walked over with a smile and gave him a hug. Brother Joe, what are you calling me for? What for? Zhou Hui glanced at the signboard on the first floor, then went straight to the high-end client area on the top floor. Big bro will bring you to spend money. At the center of Binjiang Tower's top floor design, Zhou Hui had just brought Liu Qiang to the top floor when he was stopped by Liu Qiang. Brother Joe, you want to cut off my hair here. Every single piece of pig's intestines was worth over 100 pieces. What's more, a small shop like the hair-cutting art would trick you to use your card, even thousands of times. Wouldn't this place just ruin you by a few tens of thousands? That's right, go in, Joe Hui said as he shook the backpack on his shoulder. I have money. Rich, a sarcastic voice came from behind him. Zhang Wen twisted his waist and said sarcastically, people who live on an advanced salary still have money, what a joke. Zhang Wen, don't push it too far. Liu Qiang's face instantly fell. Even people who insulted others would not say anything. What was the meaning of this Zhang Wen? So what if I bully him? Zhang Wen emphasized the sinister Yang Qi. His eyes curled up as he said, what, you were dumped by the beauty Liu Zhu, you think that your days are over? You? Liu Qiang took a step forward, and Zhou Hui reached out to stop him, smiling faintly, throw me away. Is she worthy of me? Who in the company doesn't know that you're poor? Zhang Wen rolled his eyes, he spat at the ground. What are you pretending to be with me for? Ding. System prompt, there is only 1 hour left. Host, please hurry. I don't have time to waste words with you. Zhou Hui grabbed Liu Qiang's hand and directly walked into the house. Don't block my way to spend money. Spending money? How new? Zhang Wen burst out laughing. She had long heard of it from Liu Zhu. Even people who didn't eat for 3 days to buy a special price to buy a Dior bag would come here to spend money. Make a pose here, Zhou Hui said as he weighed his own bag and took a glance inside. How much is it? Ayo, isn't this Miss Zhang? Just as Zhou Hui walked to the door, a teacher named Tony, who had an art director tag on his name, came out to enthusiastically welcome him, as if he did not hear Zhou Hui's words. He walked straight towards Zhang Wen. Is it still the same maintenance set as before? Amen. Zhang Wen turned his head to look at Zhou Hui and pointed at him with a mocking and naughty smile. Are you worthy of me spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on your maintenance? Tony immediately understood. He had seen this kind of thing too many times. It was nothing more than a gold game for the rich. Then he glanced at Zhou Hui and Liu Qiang. He was sure that these two people's entire bodies together would only cost a few $100s. Then he understood what to choose. Scram! Tony's gesture was like a wild dog lashing out at 2 roadsides, frowning as if he had smelled some kind of garbage. Don't you know our rules? What rules? Zhou Hui asked with interest as he hugged his shoulders. Poor people and dogs are not allowed in. When Tony said that, he looked at Zhang Wen and smiled. Are you rich? If you have no money, then scram. Hee, what a great saying. Poor people and dogs are not allowed in. Zhou Hui took a step back and looked at the modeling room next door. It was obvious that this house had more guests than the previous one, and many of the stylists were still idle. Zhou Hui waved towards that direction, and a golden-haired beauty walked over and enthusiastically asked, Sir, are you doing a pose? Hee, I'm not talking about you, Xiao Liu, Tony said as he stood at the door. Do you know why there are no guests in your house? Don't you think it's too much for the 2 of them? What if it affects the other guests? Liu Mena frowned. She had never looked down on this kind of bully, and so she did not pay attention to him. Who knew that at this moment Zhang Wen spoke again. Miss, how about this? I will get a full set of nursing cards from you too, Zhang Wen said absent-mindedly as he looked at his newly made beautiful armor. As for those 2, just throw them out. Don't embarrass yourself like this. Miss, Liu Mena replied in a neither humble nor haughty manner. We are open for business and the guests are guests. I cannot agree to your request. Hee, you don't agree, right? Zhang Wen sneered sinisterly. Then I will tell all my friends your hair dye is poisonous. I can guarantee that you will go out of business within 3 months. Miss Liu, just as Liu Mena frowned and wanted to say something, Zhou Hui opened his mouth and said, I want to buy 30 sets for all your expensive style sets. 30 sets. Everyone present was shocked. He wanted to buy 30 sets of a set of a model that was close to 10,000. That was a whole 300,000. It would be enough to buy a house owner and a wife in a small city. Brother Hui, 30 years, 30 years. Liu Qiang stopped Zhou Hui, his face pale. Don't be rash. Believe me, Zhou Hui patted Liu Qiang's shoulder lightly and continued. I will play with my brother and the rest will be gifted to the 28 customers who come here to pose. Whoa. Zhou Hui's words were not loud, but the content was astonishing and very quickly attracted the attention of the people around. You must be bragging, right? I see that his clothes are only slightly better than that of a beggar on the street. How can a country bumpkin take out 300,000 to burn? Hahaha, if he can take out the money, I'll do a live broadcast and lick his feet. The surrounding people were discussing. They obviously did not believe Zhou Hui, and Liu Qiang's forehead was also covered in perspiration. Hahaha, I say, Zhou Hui. Zhang Wen laughed so hard that he could not take his anger. If you really have money, then you should first exchange for the pirated version of Adidas for your body. Exactly, little Liu, I think you're crazy to start work, right? Do you really believe in anyone? Tony taunted. Zhou Hui was not moved. He only said to Liu Mena indifferently, Go draw up the bill, I will pay. Liu Mena frowned, troubled. She could not believe that Zhou Hui could actually take out such a large sum of money and even gave it away for free. However, out of respect for her customers, she still went to open the ticket and handed over the first VIP card according to the store's rules, a total of 280,000. No need to give me a discount, I'll give you 300,000. Zhou Hui answered. He unzipped his backpack and squatted on the floor and started to take out money like he was taking out a book. One stack, two piles, three piles. The bright red money was piled up on the ground just like that, all the way until Joe Hui had counted to 30. The shock brought about by this scene had stimulated everyone's nerves. That was a total of 300,000. This is impossible. Zhang Wen was so shocked that his jaw dropped. This must be a fake money. How could he be so rich? With her words as a reminder, everyone present felt relieved. That's right, how could someone possibly bring out some cash? It was most likely a sand sculpture of some sort, right? Little brother, counterfeiting is against the law. So even without money, you can use fake money to act tough. 666. This wave of maneuvers is really good. Young man, I feel like you have a talent for posturing. The crowd was filled with endless mockery. Liu Qiang impatiently interrupted, won't we know if it's fake or not after testing it out? At the moment, his eyes were shining. No one understood Zhou Hui's character more than him. He would never use a fake coin. Could it be, was his brother really rich? Liu Mena nodded at Zhou Hui and handed over the cashier to take out the money machine to start counting the money. When the last money was counted, everyone was shocked. It's true. An entire 300,000. This Zhang Wen's face was ashen. He looked at Zhou Hui as though he had seen a ghost. How can you have so much money? Money? Zhou Hui sneered. He took out another stack of papers from his bag, opened them and threw them into the crowd. He stood outside Kaian Yu, looked at the people fighting over them and said indifferently, to me that is just trash paper.
F***CK, awesome. Big bro is awesome, where's that live broadcast lick? I am not human, I'm a dog, big bro don't bother with me. Public opinion instantly changed directions as people rushed to snatch the money. Those who could not get the money would be squeezed into the muse's main entrance. That was a free, complete set. In the chaos, Zhang Wen's face changed again and again. It was worse than eating a fly, and Tony by his side felt his heart bleeding. That was 300,000. The more Tony thought about it, the more he felt aggrieved. Furthermore, the customer was supposed to come over to his place. If it wasn't for Zhang Wen, that bitch, he would have raised the price to at least 10,000. Where could he find such a rich man? First, Tony walked up to him with a big smile on his face. He still wanted to fight for more money. After all, he was a true tycoon who knew how to throw away money. Who knew that Zhou Hui didn't even look at him, he only imitated his attitude and tone and said, "Scram, don't you know I have rules?" "What rules?" "Lick the dog and you are not allowed to get close." With that, Zhou Hui strode into the heart of the muse and said to Liu Mena with a smile, "Let's go, dress us up handsome." The contrast between the two sides made the surrounding crowd feel that it was true. This Tony had completely offended this rich man who was throwing away money. After entering, he washed his scissors and blew and even dressed well. Although it was not expensive, it was better than Zhou Hui's pretty appearance and good temperament. Liu Qiang, on the other hand, was tall and had long legs. Although he looked average, he was also at the level of the long-legged Oppa. Putting aside his previous actions of throwing away money, just the comparison between the two of them was the best advertisement for Muse. Liu Mena looked at the results of working hard for almost an hour. She was very satisfied with this start. There are still tens of thousands left in this bag, I did not count it. Zhou Hui handed the shabby backpack over to Liu Mena. Liu Mena maintained the same attitude as when she first saw Zhou Hui and smiled at him in a neither humble nor overbearing manner. "All right, sir. This is my private number. If you need anything, just give me a call." "All right," Zhou Hui said as he used his cell phone to take Liu Qiang away. As soon as they walked out of the muse-shaped gate, they immediately attracted the attention of many girls of the same age. "So handsome." So what if he's handsome, he's also very rich? He was the one who threw money here just now. When the sounds of the discussions reached their ears, Zhou Hui and Liu Qiang smiled at each other, feeling extremely carefree in their hearts. This was because they, who were looked down upon by others, would one day be secretly sent away by many girls. While he was feeling very comfortable in his heart, Zhou Tao suddenly heard the system chime. "Congratulations to the host for completing the quest of the small test knife or a skill lottery. Would you like to draw it now?" "Yes, sir." "Congratulations to the host, bartender, for obtaining the additional skill and leveling up to the lucky master level. I hope you can continue working hard." Just as she finished speaking, the screen in Zhou Hui's mind displayed the location where he used to collect his money. Moreover, this time there were 3 places. The moment he walked out of the building, Zhou Hui waved to a taxi and anxiously said, "Quick, to the Rose Bar." "Brother Hui," Liu Qiang sat in the back seat and looked at Zhou Hui blankly. "What are you doing in such a hurry?" Zhou Hui leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes and leisurely said, "Big bro will bring you to get the money." Rose Bar was the most upscale establishment in the city, known for its extravagant expenses and elite clientele. For Joe Hui, who had once tried working earnestly to change his fate, this place had always seemed out of reach. Even if he had money, he would never have dared to step inside. But today was different. Today he had come to collect money. As they entered, the deafening music immediately assaulted their senses. The bass thumped so hard it felt like it rattled their bones. Joe Hui quickly found a seat with no one around and gestured for Liu Qiang to sit down and stay calm. "I'll be right back," he said before heading toward the washroom. But Joe Hui didn't stop there. Following the strange, guiding coordinates that had appeared in his mind, he slipped through a side exit and found himself in a dimly lit alley behind the bar. He followed the navigation for about 10 meters until his eyes landed on a silver suitcase discreetly placed in a corner. He knelt and opened it, and his breath caught. The suitcase was filled with cash neatly bundled, and sitting atop the stacks was a sleek black bank card. "Ding, host, before dawn tonight you must spend the 500,000 balance on your light card and the 300,000 in cash. Failure to do so will result in a 50% deduction of your lifespan." Joe Hui glanced at his watch and grinned. "It's only 8 p.m. Don't worry, we'll definitely be done for." Meanwhile, back inside Rose Bar. "Yo, isn't this stupid Liu?" a mocking voice called out. Lin Hao sauntered over, his arm wrapped possessively around Liu Zhu while his group of lackeys trailed behind. His eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. "What's with that haircut, huh? You trying to look like a donkey or what?" One of the lackeys, Wang Bin, chimed in eagerly. "Brother Hao, you're giving him too much credit. Even a donkey knows its own kind. If stupid Liu bombs another exam, I bet he won't even know how to spell donkey." The group erupted into raucous laughter. Lin Hao reached into his pocket and pulled out a few crisp red bills, tossing them to Wang Bin. "I like the way you think, Bin Zai. Consider this your reward." Like a dog scrambling for a treat, Wang Bin dashed forward and scooped up the money, his face plastered with a sycophantic grin. "Thank you, Brother Hao." Liu Qiang's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting through the noise. "Pathetic." "What did you say?" Wang Bin's face flushed with anger as he whirled toward Liu Qiang. "Say that again, I dare you." Smack. A heavy stack of cash struck the back of Wang Bin's head, the bills scattering to the floor. The crowd turned, stunned, as Joe Hui approached with the silver suitcase in hand. "If we're talking about rewards," Joe Hui said coolly, "why don't you take a look at what your grandpa Hui brings to the table? Let's see your dog tricks now." Wang Bin's face darkened as he spun around. "Joe Hui, you little didn't I beat you enough last time." "Tusk," Lin Hao sneered, his eyes flickering between the scattered money and the suitcase. "What's this, Hui? Steal from your family and come here to act rich?" Hearing that, Liu Zhu, who had been clinging to Lin Hao, immediately seized the opportunity to distance herself from Joe Hui. She leaned closer to Lin Hao, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Brother Hao, I have nothing to do with him anymore. I'm yours now." Lin Hao's smirk grew wider. He looked down at Joe Hui with a mix of arrogance and amusement. "Get drunk over a woman like that, please?" Joe Hui shook his head and tapped his temple. "Lin Hao, I think you've got some serious issues if you think she's worth it. You're parading around in my old shoes, doesn't that feel gross?" Lin Hao's expression soured instantly. Joe Hui had hit a nerve. The real reason he kept going after Joe Hui was his own insecurity. He hated the idea of being seen with Joe Hui's castoffs, and now in front of everyone his secret humiliation had been laid bare. "I think you're asking for a beating," Lin Hao growled through gritted teeth. "You got the guts to step outside so we can settle this." Lin Hao had been practicing taekwondo for years. In a one-on-one fight he was confident he wouldn't lose. Joe Hui only laughed, making his way back to his seat beside Liu Qiang. "Why would I bother fighting you alone? If you're so tough, let's settle this right here." The crowd buzzed with excitement at the prospect. "Here," Wang Bin's face paled as he leaned in to whisper urgently into Lin Hao's ear. "Brother Hao, Rose Bar is under Brother Hu's protection. If a fight breaks out, it's gonna get messy." "Of course I know that," Lin Hao snapped. "That's why I wanted to take this outside." But then a new thought struck him. If Joe Hui dared start a fight here with his connections to Brother Hu, he'd make sure Joe Hui wouldn't walk out in one piece. "All right," Lin Hao said with a dangerous smile, reclining back onto the sofa. "Let's see if you've got the guts." After saying that, Lin Hao took off his clothes and revealed the muscles on his body that were hidden deep inside. "Brother Hao, you're so handsome." FCK, as expected of Brother Hao, with this body Joe Hui and Liu Qiang are dead for sure. "Come on, Brother Hao, beat him up." Brother Hui, Liu Qiang was so angry that his face flushed red. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "This bastard is simply going too far. I'll help you beat him up." Zhou Hui understood what Liu Qiang meant. He was afraid that he would be beaten up, but how could he be beaten up by trash like Lin Hao? Giving Liu Qiang a comforting look, Zhou Hui punched him on the shoulder. So it turns out that you helped me get beaten up quite a bit. From today onwards I won't let anyone beat you up. Then he turned his head to the side. Zhou Hui saw that Lin Hao was extremely pleased with himself and could not help but laugh. Aren't you looking for a beating? He did not take off his clothes, nor did he open his mouth. Instead, he bent down and pressed the service bell on the table. Not long after, a waiter dressed in a suit and leather shoes walked over and roughly sized up Lin Hao, who was behind the seated Zhou Hui, and understood what was going on. This was a smart person and a retarded person. Sir, the waiter bowed slightly, is there anything I can help you with? Yes, Zhou Hui used his foot to kick the silver chest on the table. Bring me your best wine and also call the people from the market over to see me, I need his help with something. Best wine. And all of them. Was this brat's head squeezed by a door? Lin Hao looked at Zhou Hui with a funny expression. Liu Zhu squeezed even harder than before and said, this little brother, we are not together with him. Zhou Hui, don't think that you can order a bunch of wine and place that shit on our heads. Liu Zhu's words reminded Lin Hao and he immediately went into an uproar. Are you seeing scheming against me? This is the Rose Bar. Just 3 bottles of this town's treasure was worth over 100,000 yuan. Let alone him, even if his father came, he wouldn't be able to take it. This brat was truly insidious. Seeing Lin Hao's expression of sudden enlightenment, Zhou Hui laughed. With your intelligence, you aren't even comparable to a whore. Do I have to scheme against you? You poor bastard, his mother called him with low IQ. Lin Hao puffed his beard and glared. He kicked the table over and with a clang the chests on the table fell to the ground. Lin Hao, Liu Zhu and the rest were all stunned. This so much money. The waiter had obviously seen much, so he calmly kept the money back into the box. When he bowed to Zhou Hui, his waist was bent to the point of almost reaching his knees. Sir, I will immediately serve you some wine and call the brother Hu over. With that he left, leaving Lin Hao and Wang Bin standing there in shock, looking at Zhou Hui in disbelief. Did he win the lottery? This was especially so for Liu Zhu. His face was as pale as purple pig liver, and seeing how Zhou Hui squandered his money like dirt, as if he did not care about the money, he couldn't help but feel regret in his heart. Although Lin Hao was rich, he was still very stingy towards her and would rather be generous to that bitch, Wang Bin. If he did not abandon Zhou Hui at that time with the degree of love Zhou Hui had for him, wouldn't he have what he wanted? Of course, Lin Hao had noticed Liu Zhu's abnormality, but the reality was right in front of him. He definitely could not afford to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at any time. Could it be? Was he really going to lose to this poor bastard? Just as he was thinking about it, Brother Hu followed the waiter and walked over with a huge pile of alcohol. Lin Hao hurriedly walked over as if he had seen some life-saving straw. Brother Hu, you have to help me, Lin Hao cried until her nose was wet. This brat bullied me. Brother Hu frowned for a long time before he remembered who this crying brat was. He slapped him. You're useless. Then, he followed the waiter in front of Zhou Hui, slightly nodding his head, indicating that he wanted Zhou Hui to spend the 300,000. Brat, what are you looking for me for? Zhou Hui smiled slightly. It's not really that big of a deal, it's just that this classmate of mine wants to fight with me one-on-one. I'm worried that I won't be able to beat him, so I asked Brother Hu to watch over me. Watch it? Brother Hu frowned. What do you mean? Zhou Hui stood up, stretched his neck, raised his hand and swung his arm, giving Lin Hao a fierce slap. The slap caused Lin Hao's entire person to sway to the side. After that, he rubbed his red hands together, walked to the side of Brother Hu and said indifferently, if by any chance I get beaten up by this brat and I get punched again, you can help me beat it back. Lin Hao was stunned by Zhou Hui's slap, his entire body bristling like an angry hedgehog. With a furious cry, he leaped up and spun, sending a roundhouse kick straight toward Zhou Hui's face, but before the blow could land, a strong hand clamped down on his leg. It was Brother Hu. For the sake of your father, let me remind you, Brother Hu said, his eyes narrowing dangerously, his voice low and full of menace. If you kick him, I will kick you. Can you take it? The message was clear. If Lin Hao insisted on violence, Brother Hu's retaliation would be on an entirely different level. Lin Hao had trained in Taekwondo for 2 years. He had some skill enough to intimidate the weak and inexperienced Zhou Hui, but even against Liu Qiang his victories were uncertain. Against Brother Hu, there was no contest. One punch from Brother Hu could very well shatter his face. Still, Lin Hao's pride flared. When Brother Hu saw the defiance in his eyes, he acted swiftly, yanking Lin Hao's ankle and tossing him onto the sofa like a ragdoll. If you can't even understand that, brother Hu sneered, how did Lin Jiangguo end up with such a fool for a son? You idiot, Lin Hao spat, his face red with rage. If you've got the guts, fight me one-on-one. He directed his anger at Zhou Hui, but the moment he finished speaking, Zhou Hui stepped forward without hesitation. The usually timid, obedient boy raised his hand and delivered another ruthless slap across Lin Hao's face. How dare you hit me? Lin Hao started, but the cold, warning glare from brother Hu froze him mid-sentence. Why wouldn't I dare? Zhou Hui's voice was icy and calm. He seized Lin Hao's hair and drove his knee into his stomach, forcing a wheeze of pain from his opponent. Isn't this what you wanted? Zhou Hui mocked, his voice rising with each blow. He delivered another harsh slap. One-on-one, right? Lin Hao, why aren't you fighting back? Zhou Hui demanded, his words dripping with scorn. Another kick sent Lin Hao sprawling to the ground. Didn't you practice taekwondo? Zhou Hui taunted, slamming his foot into Lin Hao's side. Didn't you want to make me retarded? A vicious kick struck Lin Hao's head. Ah, why aren't you fighting back? Years of indulgence had left Lin Hao's body weak and his spirit softer still. The endless drinking, the women, the arrogance, all of it crumbled under Zhou Hui's relentless assault. Pain racked his body, his head ringing as he lay gasping on the floor. You're unreasonable, Lin Hao finally choked out, his voice ragged. Zhou Hui laughed coldly. He grabbed a tissue from the table, calmly wiping his hands as though he'd just finished dealing with something dirty. Unreasonable, he echoed. Lin Hao, do you think the weak have any right to reason? He tossed the crumpled tissue onto Lin Hao's face. Once I was weak, no money, no power, only good grades to my name. Back then when I tried to reason, no one listened. No one believed me. You trampled my dignity into the dirt. Zhou Hui's eyes burned with a quiet fury. Now that I'm strong, why should I care about reason? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. So what? The declaration, fierce, unapologetic and powerful, sent the crowd into a frenzy. The watching girls screamed in admiration, their voices rising like waves in the darkened bar. Even Liu Zhu, who had once scorned Zhou Hui, now looked on with wide, regretful eyes. Overwhelmed by Zhou Hui's transformation and charisma, Liu Zhu's regret deepened. She wiped her tears and moved toward him. Hui Zai, she whispered, her voice trembling, I never wanted to be with Lin Hao, he threatened me. Bitch, Lin Hao groaned from the floor, his face contorted in pain. If you hadn't climbed into my bed, do you think I'd have wanted you? Shut up, Liu Zhu snapped, slapping him hard across the face. Turning back to Zhou Hui, she adopted a soft, pleading expression. Her eyes shimmered with desperation as she slowly reached for him, hoping to sit beside him. But Zhou Hui's cold, disdainful voice stopped her in her tracks. Did I say you could sit? Liu Zhu froze, the blood drained from her face. She dropped to her knees in front of him, her hands trembling as they reached toward him in a pathetic display. You like me, right? She whispered, her voice breaking. You'll forgive me, won't you? Zhou Hui's expression twisted in sheer disgust the moment Liu Zhu uttered those words. Like it. He felt a wave of revulsion surge through him. How had he ever been blind enough to fall for someone so utterly shameless? Once upon a time she had played the innocent White Lotus, acting pure and devoted to him. Yet the moment his back was turned, she had slithered into Lin Hao's bed without hesitation. And now she was reaching for his crotch as if that could erase the past. His stomach churned in sheer contempt. Take your dirty hands away. His voice was as cold as steel, sending a shiver down Liu Zhu's spine. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper. You want to apologize, you want me to forgive you. Liu Zhu, practically groveling at his feet, nodded frantically like a pathetic little mutt desperate for affection. Zhou Hui's lips curled into a sneer. All right. With a casual flick of his wrist, he retrieved a sleek black bank card from his jacket and tossed it toward Brother Hu. Go cash this out and bring it here. Brother Hu nodded and left. The room was thick with tension, the air almost suffocating. Minutes later, a massive pile of cash was dumped onto the table. Neatly stacked bills formed a small mountain, glinting under the dim lights. Without hesitation, Zhou Hui grabbed a thick bundle and smacked it against Liu Zhu's cheek with a sharp thwap. Slap yourself 10,000 per hit. The room fell into a stunned silence. Liu Zhu stiffened, her expression flickered with humiliation, but it quickly twisted into something else, calculation. Was it revenge? Was he simply trying to degrade her? So what? Money was money. Dignity, what was that worth in the face of cold, hard cash? Her resolve hardened. Gritting her teeth, she raised a trembling hand and smacked herself across the face. Zhou Hui watched, utterly expressionless. Satisfied, he picked up another bundle of bills and slapped it against her swelling cheek. Continue. Liu Zhu bit the inside of her cheek, forcing herself to endure the pain. Again and again she struck herself, the sharp sound echoing in the hushed room. With each hit, another crisp stack of bills landed at her feet. Her face grew red, then swollen, then grotesquely unrecognizable. A murmur of unease rippled through the crowd. But before anyone could react, Wang Bin, who had been standing off to the side watching everything unfold, suddenly dropped to his knees with a loud thud. "Brother Hui," he wailed, slapping himself in the face as he eyed the money greedily. "I was blind before, I didn't recognize your greatness. If this bitch gets 10,000 per slap, I'll do it for 5. Zhou Hui cocked an eyebrow, his lips curling in amusement. "Oh, is that so?" He idly picked up a wad of cash and tossed it at Wang Bin's feet. "If you're that eager, go slap Lin Hao instead, 10,000 per hit." Wang Bin hesitated only for a split second. Then, with newfound determination, he scrambled over to Lin Hao, who was still sprawled helplessly on the floor. Lin Hao's eyes widened in horror. "Wait. Smack." Wang Bin's palm crashed against Lin Hao's already battered face. "Bro, what are you doing?" Lin Hao spluttered, but Wang Bin's greed had long drowned out any sense of loyalty. Smack. Another hit. Lin Hao's breathing turned ragged, he could barely move, barely think. His body, once so full of arrogance, now lay motionless, his blood boiling with humiliation. His former woman was humiliating herself for money. His former lackey was beating him for it. Overwhelmed, his vision blurred. A choking rage built up inside him, too much, too fast. His body trembled violently, and then he blacked out. The moment Lin Hao lost consciousness, Wang Bin hesitated. He knew better than to push his luck. If something happened to Lin Hao, his father would come after him. No, the smarter move was to latch onto Zhou Hui instead. And so, with zero shame, Wang Bin turned to face him. Like a sudden epiphany had struck him, he straightened up, cupped his hands around his mouth, and let out a series of loud, exaggerated woof woof woof. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Zhou Hui stared at him, eyes glinting with sharp amusement. "What is it, my good little dog, needs something?" Wang Bin grinned, his expression downright shameless. "Brother Hui, let me follow you," he pleaded. "I'll be your dog, I'll do anything, let me serve you." Zhou Hui scoffed, his disgust evident. "A mud-covered stray like you, no thanks." He swung his leg out, landing a sharp kick to Wang Bin's chest. The man yelped and tumbled backward. "Scram, I don't need mutts like you hanging around." Wang Bin didn't seem the least bit offended. He simply grinned and backed away, still clutching his money as he disappeared into the night. Now only Liu Zhu remained. The piles of cash around her had grown, forming a hill of bright red bills. She looked utterly ruined, her face swollen beyond recognition, her body trembling from exhaustion. But still she crawled to Zhou Hui's feet, grasping at his pants like a desperate beggar. "Hui Zai, please forgive me, just this once please." Her voice was hoarse, raw with desperation. Zhou Hui looked down at her, expression unreadable. Then with a slow, deliberate motion, he grabbed her by the collar and slammed her onto the table. Liu Zhu gasped, eyes wide with shock. Zhou Hui leaned in close, his voice deathly quiet. "Look at you," he murmured. "You're pathetic, you're not even worthy to carry my shoes." Liu Zhu's entire world shattered in that moment. She had never imagined, never dreamed, that Zhou Hui would be so utterly ruthless. She had thought that money would buy his forgiveness, that if she humbled herself enough he'd take her back. But there was nothing left in his eyes, no love, no hate, just cold indifference. "No matter what happened before, consider your debt repaid," Zhou Hui said calmly. "I don't owe you anything anymore." He released her, stepping back. "From this moment on, don't ever let me see you again." Liu Zhu's lips parted, but no words came out. She could only watch in stunned silence as Zhou Hui turned away, leaving her behind without a second glance. And just like that, it was over. Liu Zhu clutched the money tightly to his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around the stacks of cash. No one would want to let go of such a massive sum, not when it was right there, so tangible, so life-changing. Before slipping away, he forced an awkward smile, hoping desperately that it would redeem his shattered image in Zhou Hui's eyes. But the attempt was pitiful and everyone knew it. As Liu Zhu scrambled out of the rose bar like a beaten dog, Zhou Hui turned his attention to the still trembling Lin Hao. His face was ice cold, his gaze sharp. Without even glancing at Brother Hu, he gestured toward the untouched wine on the table. "This wine's for you," he said simply. "Thank you very much," Brother Hu replied without hesitation. Without another word, Brother Hu grabbed Lin Hao and tossed him, quite literally, out of the rose bar. The moment the task was done, a wave of satisfaction washed over Zhou Hui. His good mood was evident. He clapped a hand on Liu Qiang's shoulder, grinning wide. Let's go, this bro's taking you to the second floor for a drink. Liu Qiang's eyes welled up with emotion. Brother Hui, you're too awesome, he said, his voice shaking with admiration. They shared a similar past, both ridiculed, both underestimated. But seeing Zhou Hui stand tall now, commanding respect and exuding an aura of power, it made Liu Qiang's blood boil with excitement. Kid, you've got some ambition, haven't you? Zhou Hui teased, giving him a playful punch on the chest. Good days are just beginning, let's go drink. Their laughter carried them up to the second floor where their arrival immediately turned heads. The crowd recognized them from the spectacle downstairs and the whispers began. That's the guy who spent all that money on the first floor. Handsome and rich, he's the ideal husband. I need to find a way to get his contact info. Zhou Hui settled into an empty seat, his smile devilish and self-assured. His presence captivated the room, and soon enough women started approaching, each one more stunning than the last, swaying their hips and tossing flirtatious glances his way. But Zhou Hui played it cool. He accepted their admiration without effort, his confidence only making them more eager. Meanwhile, Liu Qiang sat awkwardly by his side. The attention was clearly focused on Zhou Hui, and the gap between them felt wider than ever. Brother Hui, I've got something urgent to take care of, Liu Qiang said at last, his voice tinged with embarrassment. What's the rush? Zhou Hui asked, his eyes narrowing. It's nothing big, Liu Qiang replied hastily, draining his glass and rising to his feet. I'll see you later. All right, Zhou Hui nodded. If you need help, just ask. With a grateful nod, Liu Qiang waved and left. Just then, a familiar voice echoed in Zhou Hui's mind. Ding, host, please be advised, you must spend all your money before dawn to collect it. The reminder snapped Zhou Hui's focus back to reality. There was no time for rest, not if he wanted to make the most of this windfall. He snapped his fingers, catching the attention of a nearby waiter. Bring me the best bartender you've got. The Rose Bar was famous for its instant cocktails and even more so for the stunning bartenders who crafted them. Each one was a vision of beauty and elegance, and their services didn't come cheap. A short while later, the bartender arrived. She wore an English-style suit and waistcoat paired with a sleek black skirt, her sharp attire only enhancing the air of sophistication around her. Every movement was precise, every gesture elegant. But her face was ice cold, betraying not a single emotion. Zhou Hui's eyes gleamed with curiosity as he studied her. There was something about her detachment that made her even more intriguing. Make me your best cocktail, he said. The bartender gave a slight nod and began her work, her hands moving with practiced grace. What's your name? Zhou Hui asked casually. You can call me Ai Mei, she replied without looking up. He frowned, that was obviously not her real name. What would it take for you to tell me your real name? He pressed, flashing a confident smile. She remained silent, focused entirely on her craft, but the other women nearby had plenty to say. Tisk, she's just a bartender, what's she acting so high and mighty for? She's probably not even that good at mixing drinks. Handsome, why not come home with me instead? I'll make you something better. But Zhou Hui paid them no mind. His eyes stayed fixed on Ai Mei, his curiosity only deepening. 10,000 yuan, he offered. Tell me your real name. No response. 20,000. Still nothing. 50,000, he said, voice low and serious. At last Ai Mei looked up. If you can make a cocktail that impresses me, she said calmly, I'll tell you. The challenge hung heavy in the air. Make you a drink, that's all, Zhou Hui asked, eyebrows raised. It's not as easy as it sounds, Ai Mei warned. Zhou Hui's grin widened. He was already riding high from his earlier victory, and now this ice-cold beauty had thrown down the gauntlet. All right, he said, laughter bubbling up from his chest. Challenge accepted. The crowd around them stirred with excitement. Ai Mei was famous in the Rose Bar, known both for her exceptional skills and her untouchable demeanor. Many had tried to win her over, but none had succeeded. Is this guy serious? Someone whispered. He thinks he can impress the Ice Queen. He'll crash and burn just like the rest. But Zhou Hui didn't care about the whispers, he only had eyes for Ai Mei. All right then, he said, stepping forward with a gleam of anticipation. Watch closely, let's see who's really worth admiring. The corner of Zhou Hui's mouth curls into a smile as he strides toward the counter, his movements composed and unhurried. The dim lights of the Rose Bar cast shifting patterns over the polished wood, reflecting off the rows of colorful bottles lined behind the bar. Reaching Zhou Liuping's side, he lifts an eyebrow at her, but her expression remains unreadable, cool, detached. Word of the challenge has already spread downstairs and skepticism lingers in her gaze. She has heard it all before. No one has ever truly impressed her, not even after all her years of studying abroad and sparring with the most renowned mixologists. A crowd gathers drawn by the unfolding spectacle. Some whisper in hushed excitement, others scoff. Wow, it's actually him. He has so much money, but I didn't expect him to be good at this too. He's just putting on a show. Zhou Liubing's skill is legendary. He doesn't stand a chance. He's just standing there. Does he even know what he's doing? Laughter ripples through the crowd, but Zhou Hui remains unmoved. He lets the noise wash over him, absorbed in thought. Before him, the counter gleams under the dim lights, scattered with an array of glassware, bottles, and ingredients. His fingers tap lightly against the bar as he considers his approach. Then, with a decisive motion, he picks up an ice cube and turns to Zhou Liubing. "Do me a favor," he says, his tone calm, expectant. Zhou Liubing narrows her eyes. "You're the one showing off, I'm not the one mixing." A smirk tugs at the corner of Zhou Hui's lips as he hands her the ice. "Trust me, what I create isn't something ordinary." A brief hesitation, then despite herself, Zhou Liubing accepts. Whispers stir through the onlookers. Did he just get AI made to help him? What kind of trick is this? He's smart. If the great bartender helps him, she won't badmouth the final drink. A man steps forward from the crowd, arms crossed. Let's see if he's really got what it takes. Zhou Hui instructs Zhou Liubing to cut the ice into triangles. She does so with practiced precision, the blade gliding smoothly through the crystal-clear block. He nods in satisfaction, then asks her to stir the ice with a spoon dipped in mint water. She follows his lead, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Choosing brandy as the base, Zhou Hui moves with swift confidence, adding ingredients with effortless grace. The bottles clink softly as he pours, the liquid swirling as he transfers it into a decanter. With practiced ease, he begins to shake, fluid, controlled, each motion deliberate. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. He looks like he knows what he's doing. It's just theatrics, wait till the end. Some watch in fascination, their skepticism beginning to waver. He's so cool, how can someone be so perfect? Zhou Liubing watches, arms crossed, yet her gaze remains fixed on his movements. There is something about his precision, his composure, something unexpected. The final steps approach. Zhou Hui takes the ice and examines it once more before nodding. "That's enough, thanks." He lifts his glass in casual acknowledgement. He pours the freshly shaken liquor over the ice, then adds a touch of soda. The bubbles rise, sending the triangular ice spinning. A thin layer of cream follows, settling between the liquid layers. The remaining half of the drink is poured, the layers beginning to take shape. A hushed silence falls over the crowd. The drink glows beneath the lights, a brilliant gradient of blue at the base, swirling into creamy white. The ice tumbles lazily in the effervescent liquid caught in the currents. Zhou Liubing's gaze sharpens, recognition flashes in her eyes. This is. Gasp from the crowd. It can't be Angel Beauty. Excited voices erupt in response. Angel Beauty, a legendary cocktail created by a Portuguese bartender in the 1980s. The recipe was lost long ago. Zhou Liubing's pulse quickens. The impossible drink sits before her, flawless in presentation. She watches as Zhou Hui adds the final touch, a single drop of deep red juice. It falls, spreading like ink through the creamy white layer, shifting the colors in mesmerizing patterns. With a quiet breath, Zhou Hui slides the glass toward her. She hesitates for only a moment before accepting. Lifting the drink to her lips, she takes a sip. The flavors unfold in an instant, refreshing sweetness, a hint of sour, a whisper of salt. The balance is perfect, the complexity intoxicating. A single tear slips down her cheek, disappearing into the swirling colors of the glass. You stand before the spectacle of an artist at work. Zhou Liubing, a figure of renown in the world of mixology, is transfixed. Never before had she encountered a drink of such depth, a liquid symphony of complexity that mirrored the very bitterness of life, only to resolve into tranquility. A masterpiece. She turns, finally breaking her stunned silence, her gaze fixed upon Zhou Hui. The question is simple, but the weight behind it immense. How did you do it? Zhou Hui responds with an air of unshakable confidence. He snaps his fingers, strides toward her, and leans in, hands resting on either side of the table, caging her in his presence. A smirk plays at his lips as he speaks, the words dripping with pride. "I told you the wine I mix isn't something ordinary people can make. Now, will you tell me your name?" A smile, a rare and unprecedented sight, graces Zhou Liubing's face as she extends a hand. "Hello, my name is Zhou Liubing." The murmur of the gathered crowd rises in pitch. She smiled, she actually smiled. I've been here 100 times and never seen her smile at anyone. Who the hell is this guy? A disciple of some legendary master. I need to look him up. He's too handsome. If I were her, I'd have just thrown myself into his arms. Even the manager and the waiting staff, once entertained by the scene unfolding before them, now stand in disbelief. The Ice Queen had melted, if only for a moment. Zhou Hui merely smirks at their amazement, ignoring them as he approaches a waiter. Without hesitation, he pulls out a wad of cash, 300,000 yuan. Here, this covers tonight's drinks and a generous tip for Miss A.I. May. I'm very satisfied with her service. And with that, he turns and strides away, not sparing a single glance behind. The room erupts once more. A tycoon, he just threw out 300,000 like it was nothing. But Zhou Hui has no interest in their reactions. He has bigger things to handle. Just as he steps out, a voice echoes in his mind. Ding, congratulations to host for completing the task. You have unlocked the second location. He frowns. The last time he completed a task, he received a reward, yet now there is nothing. No additional skills, he muses. The response is blunt. Supplementary skills are granted at random. This time none appeared. Zhou Hui exhales, accepting the reality. A glance at the mental map reveals his next destination. He moves toward the exit just as the first rays of dawn break the darkness, cooling the night's intensity. Then a voice calls out to him. Zhou Hui. He turns to see Song Kaiyan, his supervisor. Today she is out of her usual work attire, her hair cascading freely down her shoulders. There is something different about her, a softer air. She eyes him warily, taking in his disheveled state, dark circles, loose hair, the unmistakable scent of alcohol, her brows knit together. Zhou Hui, were you here all night? He does not answer, only nods. Sigh escapes her lips, full of concern. Listen, I know breaking up with your girlfriend hit you hard, but drowning yourself in alcohol isn't the answer. She speaks with the authority of someone who has fought her way through life, wanting the best for those she deems worthy. She left because she wasn't meant for you. You have so much potential, Zhou Hui. If you focus, work hard, there's nothing you can't achieve. You'll find someone who truly values you. Once he might have been grateful for these words, now they only feel misplaced. Chief, it's not what you think. She cuts him off before he can finish. You don't need to explain, just promise me you'll pull yourself together. Zhou Hui chuckles softly. How could she understand? Reaching into his pocket, he pulls out 2 stacks of bills. By the way, about the salary advance, I'm settling the difference. Shock flickers across Song Kaiyan's face. Zhou Hui, do you have enough? If not, I can cover you a little longer. Before she can finish, he places the cash into her hands, nearly 20,000 yuan, more than enough to settle his debt. Her fingers tighten around the bills, her thoughts racing. How did he suddenly have so much money? Zhou Hui, you're not. Her voice wavers, concern giving way to suspicion. Zhou Hui laughs, shaking his head. Relax, Chief, I still have things to do, see you around. Without another word, he moves on. The map leads him to his next destination, the most luxurious shopping center in the city, Slanka Shopping Center. As he steps inside, he is struck by the sheer opulence. Polished marble floors gleam under the light, intricate golden patterns reflecting like a dream. Ornate decorations line the walls, vases of fresh flowers breathing life into the space. Even the restroom carries an air of grandeur, the scent of incense lingering in the air. Following the directions in his mind, he enters the third stall. There upon the counter rests a golden card. Beside it a slip of paper. A single digit. Series of zeros. Zhou Hui counts. 1,000,000. Ding, a crisp mechanical voice echoed in Zhou Hui's mind. Host, please spend 1,000,000 yuan from your light card before 8 o'clock tonight, otherwise your lifespan will be deducted by 50%. He glanced at the time, 7 o'clock sharp, still early. Zhou Hui picked up the card and examined it. The sleek golden surface gleamed under the soft lighting. A realization struck him, this was Slanka's shopping card. He had heard of these before. Slanka issued 3 types, the white card available for 50,000 yuan, the silver card which required at least 100,000, and this, the rare gold card costing no less than 500,000 yuan to acquire. Only the elite of the city possessed such a card. Bitter chuckle escaped his lips. Not long ago, Liu Zhu had pestered him for a mere white card, yet he hadn't even been able to afford that. Now, within days, he held something far superior. Ironic. The mall was still mostly closed, except for the exclusive 10th floor, accessible only by a private elevator. His stomach rumbled. He hadn't even eaten yet, and if the rumors were true, the 10th floor housed the most extravagant restaurant in the city. Without hesitation, he stepped into the elevator. A well-dressed young woman was inside, her arm linked with an older man. The scent of expensive perfume lingered in the air. As soon as she noticed Zhou Hui, her lips curled into a sneer. Hubby, why do you think just anyone is allowed up here? They should put a sign outside, poor people not permitted. The older man smirked. That's right, forget about the treasures here, he couldn't afford them even if he spent his life savings. What do you want to eat, darling? I know a new Michelin restaurant. The woman nodded, casting occasional glances at Zhou Hui, her amusement thinly veiled. Zhou Hui simply scoffed and ignored them. He had seen countless women like her, just like Liu Zhu, opportunists who latched onto wealth, abandoning whoever failed to provide. The elevator door slid open. The 10th floor was nothing short of breathtaking. The architecture was lavish, reminiscent of a palace. Lofty ceilings, grand chandeliers, and multi-level boutique stores designed in various artistic styles, ancient, modern, French, Spanish, each exuding its own charm. It was a world he had never stepped into before. As he took it all in, uncertain where to start, the couple strolled past him. "Hubby, do you think he's here to eat too?" The woman covered her mouth, giggling. What could he possibly afford? The man chuckled. "Who knows, even the leftovers here are better than whatever slop he eats every day. Let's go, ignore him." Zhou Hui noted their destination, a newly opened French restaurant. Perfect. He followed not for their taunts, but because he needed to eat. Inside, the stark contrast in treatment was immediate. The couple was swarmed by waitstaff, their presence met with endless flattery. Zhou Hui completely ignored. He didn't mind, he casually picked a seat near them. A young waitress, appearing hesitant, finally approached, but before she could speak, another server pulled her aside. "Zioxy, don't waste your time, people like him just order a cup of tap water and sit around, it's useless." Zioxy hesitated, then smiled politely and walked up to Zhou Hui. "Sir, may I take your order?" He glanced around, there were no menus. "Where's the menu?" he asked. She shook her head. "We don't have one, you may request any ingredients you like and the chef will create a custom dish." A restaurant where wealth dictated the meal. The couple snickered nearby. "See, he doesn't even know how to order, he should just go downstairs for a cup of soy milk." "No, hubby, this is the CBD, he probably can't even afford soy milk." Zhou Hui smirked. He looked up at the waitress. "I'd like to rent the entire restaurant, 300,000 enough." Dioxy hesitated, visibly unsure. The couple burst into laughter. "Hahaha, a full buyout, this idiot thinks this is some street stall. Right, hubby, he's hilarious, hahaha." Zhou Hui remained unfazed. Silently he pulled out his gold card. A hush fell over the surrounding patrons. He has a gold card. Probably fake, if he were really rich would he dress like that? Zioxy, unsure how to proceed, took the card and rushed off to find the manager. Moments later, a middle-aged man appeared, his eyes scanning the room. Upon spotting the older man and the couple, he beamed. "Boss Wang, why didn't you inform me you were coming? Are you the one requesting a full buyout?" The older man laughed heartily. "Manager Lee, not me, him." He pointed at Zhou Hui with open disdain. "This brat is just putting on a show, you should kick him out before he embarrasses himself." Manager Lee turned, studying Zhou Hui closely. His initial confidence wavered. He approached, his tone polite yet uncertain. "Sir, are you truly requesting to book the entire restaurant for 300,000? Zhou Hui took a sip from the bowl in front of him. Snickers erupted from those around him. Even Manager Lee stifled a chuckle. Dioxy leaned in awkwardly. "Sir, that's hand-washing water." Zhou Hui calmly set the bowl down. "Manager," he said as if nothing had happened, "since it's possible, process the payment, deduct 310,000, the extra is a tip for the waitstaff." His voice was steady, utterly indifferent to the amount he was spending. Manager Lee hesitated but eventually nodded, stepping away to confirm the transaction. The older man grinned. "See, I told you it's fake, he's just some lowlife bluffing his way through life, why don't you throw him out already?" Manager Lee did not spare Boss Wang a second glance, striding directly to Zhou Hui with an air of servility. A tense silence followed as realization dawned upon Boss Wang. His earlier arrogance now seemed like a precarious gamble, when he was grateful he hadn't taken too far. If he had truly embarrassed this man, the 300,000 yuan in his possession would have slipped through his fingers like sand. With a nervous chuckle, Manager Lee lowered his head. "Sir, it really doesn't mean anything. Just now it was my dog eyes that failed to recognize MT. Tai, you wish to take care of it in the morning? Of course, taking care of it for the entire day would be even better." Zhou Hui responded with nothing more than a nonchalant "Mn," his gaze indifferent. Only then did Manager Lee let out a breath of relief. He turned to his waitstaff, his tone sharp. "What are you all standing around for? Hurry up and pour the water, go fetch the head chef. Mister, whatever you wish to eat, discuss it directly with him." Bending slightly, he looked back at Zhou Hui. "Sir, is there anything else you require?" The exchange happened so quickly that the onlookers were left stunned, unable to process what they had just witnessed. A slight smile tugged at the corner of Joe Hui's lips. Moments ago they had ridiculed him without restraint. Now even as he merely drank water, not a single soul dared to voice a complaint. Without a word, he turned his gaze toward the couple seated beside him. Manager Lee caught the silent message and swiftly approached them. "Boss Wang, our restaurant has been fully booked. Please leave at once. I will personally refund your meal expenses." The woman at Boss Wang's side immediately frowned, her grip tightening around his sleeve. "Hubby, I want to eat here," she whined, her voice soft and coquettish, her gaze suggestive. But as she fluttered her lashes at Joe Hui, she was met with nothing but a cold, disdainful stare. Caught in the trap of her allure, Boss Wang faltered. Okay, he muttered, unable to resist. Yet in the back of his mind, logic reared its head. No one, no matter how wealthy, would spend 300,000 yuan on breakfast. Besides, the money wasn't even his, it belonged to his main household. Summoning his bravado, Boss Wang plastered a smile on his face and walked up to Joe Hui just as a tall, golden-haired, blue-eyed man entered the room. Dressed in a pristine chef's uniform, he was accompanied by Xioxi, the renowned head chef Mr. Brown. Boss Wang, undeterred, chuckled shamelessly. Handsome, it was all a misunderstanding. Joe Hui, however, paid him no mind, focused only on his discussion with Brown. Undeterred, Boss Wang tried again. Handsome, let's eat together as friends. Joe Hui's conversation with Brown concluded, he turned to Boss Wang, his voice unwavering. No. Memories of the earlier mockery surfaced. He had done nothing to provoke them, yet they had insulted him freely. Once he had endured such slights due to poverty, but now he had the power to fight back. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them, he thought. Boss Wang's face darkened, his frustration mounting. Brat, do you even know who I am? Do you believe that I? Before he could finish his threat, Joe Hui cut him off. Manager Lee, I booked this place to avoid unnecessary noise, if this continues. Understanding the implied command, Manager Lee promptly stepped forward. Boss Wang, it's best if you leave now. Let's not make this situation any uglier than it already is. Face flushing green with suppressed rage, Boss Wang shot one last glare at Joe Hui before storming out, ignoring the woman whining behind him. Just then another figure approached. Sir, I must remind you, Manager Lee said cautiously, the man who just left was Wang Zhongshan, the owner of Hayashan. He was furious when he left. I fear that he. Joe Hui barely spared the comment a thought. Wang Zhongshan, just a mere contractor. Seeing his indifference, Manager Lee chose not to interfere further. Clapping his hands, he signaled to the staff. Joe Hui leaned back in his chair, hands resting behind his head, watching as a procession of female attendants carried in trays of delicacies. Squinting slightly, he smirked. It's good to be rich. News of the extravagant breakfast purchase spread like wildfire throughout the building. As Joe Hui strolled through the market, whispers followed him everywhere, yet no one recognized him. The faint scent of alcohol still clung to him from his night at the Rose Bar. He frowned slightly, realizing he needed a fresh change of clothes. Taking out his phone, he dialed a number. The moment the call connected, a cheerful voice greeted him. Hey, brother Hui, what's up? I'm heading to Slanka to buy some clothes. Come along and pick something out. A brief hesitation. Brother Hui, I have some matters to handle later. I can't make it this time. Mildly disappointed, Joe Hui simply nodded and ended the call. His feet had led him to a men's clothing store where a handsome suit in the window display caught his eye. He halted, admiring the craftsmanship. Just then a clerk named Joe Lee emerged from the store. Her gaze flickered to the old, tattered phone in his hand. Lips curling, she scoffed before disappearing back inside. Joe Hui paid her no mind. It was just a piece of cloth after all. Inside the store, the staff engaged in lively gossip about the morning's events. Can you imagine how rich you must be to spend that much on breakfast? I wonder what he looks like. I heard he's young, one clerk gushed. Another laughed. What, you want to marry him? Joe Lee clasped her hands together dreamily. Of course, if he wanted to marry me, he could do whatever he wanted. Who wouldn't want to be a rich wife? As they spoke, they noticed Joe Hui browsing but ignored him. One clerk made a move to approach, but Joe Lee stopped her. Don't bother, he can't afford anything, he'll just look around and leave. Joe Hui, unfazed, reached out to touch the suit from the window display. Before his fingers could brush the fabric, Joe Lee interjected sharply. Hey, if you can't afford it, don't touch it. What if you damage it? How will you compensate? Joe Hui turned slowly, his gaze landing on Joe Lee. She hurried over, brushing at the fabric as if it had been contaminated, her expression filled with disdain. Seriously, a poor kid like you, who are you fooling? Joe Hui frowned but refrained from responding. Then the entrance chimed. Joe Lee immediately straightened, adopting a sweet smile. "Welcome, sir. Our store has just released a new model. Would you like to take a look? It would suit you perfectly." Zhou Hui turned his head. Their gazes locked. Of all people, Wang Zhongshan had just walked in. Zhou Hui sneered, stepping aside to browse other clothes, completely ignoring the commotion behind him. Zhou Li, sensing that the powerful man in front of her bore some grudge against the seemingly poor young man, hurried over to smooth things over. "Boss, our shop specializes in the highest-end custom fashion. Not everyone can afford it, so don't worry." Hearing this, Wang Zhongshan glanced at Zhou Hui and smirked. Could it be that this brat couldn't even afford a single outfit? Instantly, a sense of superiority swelled within him. "You're absolutely right." He heaved a dramatic sigh of relief and sank into the plush sofa. "Go fetch the clothes he was looking at. I want him to see what real wealth looks like." Zhou Hui let out a cold laugh, watching as Zhou Li obediently took the garments from the display window. Meanwhile, Wang Zhongshan continued his mocking tirade. "What's the matter, brat? Not going to keep up the act? I thought you had the ability to splurge on extravagant breakfasts worth 300,000 yuan. Turns out you're just another fraud, and now you can't even buy a single piece of clothing." Zhou Li, hearing mention of the breakfast incident, suddenly realized who Zhou Hui was. Her hands trembled, nearly dropping the expensive fabric she held. Regret flooded her, twisting her insides into knots. Zhou Hui sauntered over to Wang Zhongshan, his presence suddenly suffocating. The so-called big boss began to fidget under his gaze. "Unlike you, at least I have my own money." Zhou Hui's voice was cold, his words razor-sharp. "You're just a scavenger searching through every woman you play with for scraps." The color drained from Wang Zhongshan's face. The woman beside him flushed red in embarrassment. The onlookers fell silent. Everyone knew the truth behind Zhou Hui's words, but no one had ever dared to say it out loud until now. "Boy, you're crossing the line. I won't let this slide," Wang Zhongshan stammered. Zhou Hui simply slid his hands into his pockets, looking down at him with a smug indifference. "Waiter, bring me a pair of scissors." The atmosphere in the store turned electric. Murmurs spread through the growing crowd. What are you planning?" Panic crept into Wang Zhongshan's voice. Zhou Li, still struggling with her earlier actions, saw this as an opportunity to redeem herself. "Sir, please don't be impulsive," she pleaded. Zhou Hui took the scissors, his expression unreadable. The tension reached its peak. Some customers even shut their eyes in fear. With two swift snips, the deed was done. The entire store gasped. Wang Zhongshan's once luxurious clothes now hung in pitiful shreds, barely covering his body. His bloated beer belly jiggled as he stood there, humiliated. Only a pair of gaudy floral-patterned underwear remained. Laughter erupted. The mighty Wang Zhongshan had been utterly disgraced. Face burning red, he glared at Zhou Hui. "Do you have any idea how expensive my clothes are? Do I even what?" Zhou Hui cut him off, his smirk deepening. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gleaming gold card. Turning to the clerk, he declared, "I'll take everything in this store, charge it all." The room fell into stunned silence. The employees, recognizing an unprecedented sale, rushed to pack and swipe the card in unison, their hands trembling with excitement. Zhou Hui approached the still-shocked Wang Zhongshan. "Consider these clothes my compensation to you, but honestly, seeing you in them is a disgrace. Let me help with that." With calculated precision, he took the scissors and slashed through the expensive garments, rendering them worthless with a few well-placed snips. Humiliation washed over Wang Zhongshan in waves, his pride, his status shattered. Grinding his teeth, he spat, "Just you wait, kid, I won't let you off." With that, he stormed out, dragging his equally embarrassed companion along. Zhou Hui glanced at his account balance. Only 20,000 yuan remained. Shrugging, he decided to buy 2 more sets of clothes, one for himself, the other for his friend, stupid Liu. As he turned to leave, Zhou Li hurried after him, adjusting her posture to accentuate her figure. Flashing a dazzling smile, she purred, "Handsome, can I get your number?" Zhou Hui didn't even spare her a glance. "Not interested in people like you." She stood frozen, half embarrassed, half regretful. When had she ever offended him? Once again, Zhou Hui's actions became the talk of Slanka Market. At the next store, he picked 2 suits without trying them on. The sales clerk, aware of his recent stunt, treated him with near reverence, nearly calling him boss. With his purchases complete, Zhou Hui felt satisfied, until a voice echoed in his head. "Congratulations, host, for completing the mission and unlocking the next location." Following the system's instructions, he arrived at a secluded alley behind the shopping mall. After a few twists and turns, he spotted something on the ground, a black bag, seemingly abandoned. He picked it up. Ding! Challenge phase initiated. Before leveling up, you must spend the 100,000 yuan in this bag within 30 minutes. Failure to do so will result in a 50% reduction in your lifespan. Zhou Hui unzipped the bag. Inside, crisp stacks of bills filled every inch. What the? He almost swore aloud. 30 minutes to burn through 100,000 yuan. In an alley, this wasn't a test, it was a nightmare. System, are you kidding me? He shouted but received no reply. Time was ticking, he clutched the money, heart pounding. In the past, he would have been overjoyed at the sight of so much cash, but now it was a desperate race against time. Then, help a thief. Woman's frantic cry rang through the alley. Zhou Hui's ears perked up, that voice, it was familiar. Song Kaiyan. Without hesitation, he pulled a mask from his pocket, covering his face before sprinting toward the sound. As he rounded the corner, the scene before him confirmed his suspicions. Song Kaiyan struggled against a man attempting to yank her bag away. The challenge could wait, right now someone needed saving. The tension in the alley was thick as 5 men loomed, their expressions twisted in irritation, their hair a motley mix of colors. They were clearly part of the same group, thugs who thrived in the shadows. Zhou Hui's blood boiled at the sight. Without hesitation, he charged forward. Stop, he shouted. The gang turned in unison, their attention snapping to him like predators spotting fresh prey. They circled him, forming a wall of hostility. Where did this little brat come from? One of them sneered, the very man who had been yanking at Song Kaiyan's bag. He strolled toward Zhou Hui with a smirk. Trying to play hero, huh? Listen, if you know what's good for you, you'll turn around and scram. Without waiting for a response, the thug shoved Zhou Hui hard. Zhou Hui stumbled, his balance wavering for a moment before he caught himself. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. Fighting head-on wasn't an option, these men outnumbered him and the one in the lead looked especially dangerous. But if they were after money, that he had plenty of. You want cash? Zhou Hui pulled out a thick stack of bills from his bag. Then take mine, let her go. The thug's eyes gleamed with greed. Well, didn't expect such a big fish to walk right into our net. Cut the crap, Zhou Hui snapped, take it and let her go. He threw the money straight at the man's face. The slap of cash against his skin made the thug's smirk vanish. Fury flared in his eyes as he lunged, grabbing Zhou Hui's collar and cocking his fist back for a punch. But Zhou Hui remained unshaken. Before the punch could land, he pulled out another stack of cash and held it up. The thug froze, his expression torn between anger and avarice. Then, greed won, he lowered his fist, grinning. Smart choice, he reached for the money. At that moment, Zhou Hui's gaze flickered towards Song Kaiyan. She caught his silent message and took the chance to slip away unnoticed. She had been frozen in fear until now, her mind struggling to process what was happening. But as she ran, her heart pounded with a different rhythm, not just fear but admiration. Though the man wore a mask, something about him, the way he moved, the way he acted, was striking. Still, worry not at her, she hesitated at the corner, then ducked into the shadows, phone in hand. Quickly, she reported the scene to the police, her eyes never leaving Zhou Hui. Meanwhile, Zhou Hui wasn't done. Instead of handing the cash over, he flung it at the thug's face a second time. The group roared in outrage, several of them lunged, ready to beat him down. Wait, Zhou Hui shouted, raising his hands. You want more, I'll give you everything. Men hesitated. Taking advantage of their momentary pause, Zhou Hui yanked open his bag and threw out all the money he had. Bills fluttered through the air, raining down onto the group. As expected, greed overtook them. Their anger vanished as they scrambled to grab as much as they could. Zhou Hui didn't waste a second. He turned, ready to make his escape. Then, ding! Congratulations to the host for completing this time-limited challenge. The host has obtained a skill lottery. Would you like to draw it now? Zhou Hui's eyebrows lifted. Of course he had to. Yes. Congratulations, the host has obtained the beginner skill enhancement for Transcendent Martial Master and has leveled up to Wealth Master. Keep up the good work. Power surged through him. Zhou Hui grinned. Moments ago he was just an ordinary man, outnumbered and outmatched. Now he was something else entirely. His footsteps slowed, he turned back. The gang was still too busy grabbing money to notice him at first. Brother Wei, this is a jackpot, one of them laughed, we're rich. Yeah, we gotta celebrate. Last time I got kicked out of Spring Fragrance Massage, but this time. His words died as he followed his friend's gaze. Zhou Hui was walking toward them. Something about him was different. His arms folded across his chest, his neck tilted slightly. A sharp, crisp crack echoed through the alley as he stretched. Liu Wei, the leader, felt a sudden chill. This wasn't the same man who had been desperate moments ago. The energy around him had changed, more dangerous, more commanding. Liu Wei's breath hitched. "You, what are you doing?" He yanked one of his men in front of him like a human shield. Zhou Hui didn't stop. Slow, amused smile spread across his lips. The thug in front of Liu Wei lunged, only to be effortlessly lifted and tossed aside like a rag doll. The rest of the gang snapped out of their daze. They rushed at him. But Zhou Hui was untouchable. He grabbed the first attacker's arm, twisted, and slammed him onto the ground with a powerful shoulder throw. Another charged. Zhou Hui intercepted him mid-motion, planting a foot into his stomach and sending him flying into two others. Brutal elbow strike dropped another man instantly. In seconds, the alley was littered with groaning bodies. Only Liu Wei remained. He was shaking. You stay back, I'll call the police." Zhou Hui chuckled. "You a street thug calling the cops." Right on cue, the wail of sirens filled the air. "Nobody move, police." Zhou Hui took a step back as officers flooded the alley. Song Kaiyan emerged from her hiding spot, rushing forward to explain the situation. The police moved quickly, rounding up the battered criminals. Zhou Hui, still masked, gave his statement before turning to leave. But as he stepped outside, Song Kaiyan was there waiting. "Thank you," she stammered, "thank you so much for today." Her eyes lingered on him, admiration clear in her gaze. The way he stood, the quiet confidence in his posture, it was mesmerizing. Zhou Hui simply gave a curt nod. Then he turned to walk away. "Wait," Song Kaiyan called after him, Can I treat you to a meal?" He hesitated. For a moment, it seemed as if he might turn back. But then, without a word, he disappeared into the night. Song Kaiyan stood there, watching his retreating figure, heart pounding. Though she had never seen his face, she was captivated. And deep inside she knew she would see him again. Zhou Hui returned to the shabby rented room, the weight of the day settling on his shoulders. After a brief moment of rest, he opened the map, his eyes scanning for the next spot to pick up the money. It was only a short distance away, but the urgency of his situation lingered. Suddenly his phone rang, breaking the silence. The caller ID displayed the hospital's name. "Hello, Mr. Zhou Hui, this is the hospital. Your father Zhou Ming's condition has worsened and he's currently in the process of being resuscitated." Zhou Hui's heart tightened as he heard the news. His father, suffering from a cerebral infarction, had been in and out of the hospital for years, but they were struggling. His father's medical bills had always been a burden. They relied solely on Song Kaiyan's salary to cover the costs. Zhou Hui's mind quickly turned to Liu Zhu. The betrayal stung once again. She had climbed to a higher position and discarded him without a second thought. Despite his revenge, it all felt meaningless compared to the long years he had spent trying to make a better life. His voice came out hoarse when he spoke into the phone. "Understood, I'll pay the fees immediately, and please transfer my father to the best ward." The voice on the other end hesitated for a moment. "But with your current situation." "Don't worry," Zhou Hui cut them off and ended the call. His mind was already consumed with the need to save his father. He opened the navigation system in his mind and followed it, his steps quickening. The path led him to an old locust tree where he stopped. His fingers brushed along the tree's rough bark until he found the bank card hidden inside a hole in the trunk. As the system's prompt echoed in his mind, "Host, please spend the 2 million on this card before tomorrow afternoon. Failure to do so will result in a 50% deduction from your lifespan." Zhou Hui's eyes hardened. He had to get to the hospital to save his father. With the money in his hand, he hailed a taxi, desperate to reach the hospital as quickly as possible. But fate had other plans. The road was blocked. "Master, I'm heading to the hospital. Please find another way," Zhou Hui urged as he glanced anxiously at the 2 lines of traffic stretching ahead. The driver wiped the sweat from his forehead. "It'll be at least another hour or 2 before we move." But then, the unexpected happened. A gap opened in the traffic. The driver saw his chance and decided to take it, maneuvering the taxi to change lanes, but just as he did, an Audi ahead of them turned as well. The collision was small, but enough to cause the paint to scratch. Zhou Hui frowned but held his tongue, knowing the driver had acted out of desperation. But then, a man with dyed yellow hair exited the Audi. He stormed over, inspecting the damage before grabbing the driver by the collar. "You're paying for this?" the man shouted angrily. "Do you have any idea how much this car costs? 350,000 yuan. You probably can't even afford a meal, let alone the repairs." The driver, panicked, tried to explain. "I didn't mean to, I was just trying to get around. You turned out of nowhere." But the yellow-haired man wasn't listening. "You want to walk away from this? No chance. You're paying me 180,000 yuan today or you'll regret it." Zhou Hui's patience wore thin. He watched the scene unfold, his gaze hardening. This wasn't just about a fender bender, it was a scam. "You're clearly trying to rip him off," Joe Hui spoke up from the back of the car, his calm voice cutting through the argument. The driver, desperate, looked to Joe Hui for help. "Young man, can you help? Let's just figure out who's at fault here." Joe Hui stepped out of the car, his presence imposing. The yellow-haired man sneered, pulling out a wrench and pointing it threateningly. "One word, pay up, or I'll call a few friends over to deal with you." Joe Hui's expression remained cold. He approached the man with deliberate steps, grabbing the wrench from his hand. With a flick of his wrist, the man found himself unable to hold on. "What do you think you're doing?" the yellow-haired man growled, his face flushed with anger. Joe Hui smiled darkly. "What did you say just now?" The man stammered, clearly unnerved. I didn't mean." Last sentence, Joe Hui's voice was like ice. "Compensation, compensation," the man muttered, sweating under Joe Hui's cold gaze. Joe Hui nodded, satisfied with the answer. He then walked over to the man's Audi, casually patting the car's shiny surface. 350,000 huh, he mused aloud, "I'll pay you back." The yellow-haired man's eyes widened in disbelief. "What, are you serious? I just bought it." Without another word, Joe Hui turned and walked towards a nearby bank. He pulled out his card, withdrawing the required amount of money without hesitation. The man, who had been so confident moments ago, now watched in stunned silence as Joe Hui counted out 35 stacks of red bills, tossing them at his feet. "Here's your money," Joe Hui said nonchalantly, as if the sum was no trouble at all. The driver stood frozen, unsure of what to make of the situation. Was this a joke? Joe Hui glanced at him and said, "Don't worry, I know exactly what I'm doing." He turned to leave, the weight of his father's situation pressing on him once again. The man could hardly believe his eyes. The pile of money in his hands felt surreal. He held it tightly, his excitement growing. "You didn't lie to me? This is really for me." His voice wavered with disbelief as he looked at Joe Hui, unable to fathom the reality of the situation. Joe Hui smiled calmly, causing the man to shiver, his excitement turning into unease. "Don't worry, of course it's for you," Joe Hui assured him, his smile almost too calm, sending a chill down the man's spine. The driver, watching from the side, couldn't help but feel envy. How many trips would it take to earn that kind of money? His thoughts swirled with disbelief. Bystanders nearby were equally dumbfounded. "Is this guy really that big of an idiot?" one of them muttered. "Yeah, I don't get it, the paint job wasn't even that bad," another person added. "I wish that was me, even if my car got wrecked I'd be happy with that much money," someone else joked. Joe Hui overheard their comments but didn't respond. Instead, he simply walked toward the man who was clutching the money even tighter, now filled with anxiety. "Don't come closer, you promised, you must pay me, you can't go back on your word." The man's voice was filled with panic as he held the money protectively. Joe Hui stepped forward without hesitation and, in one smooth motion, took the large wrench from the man's hand. The man's eyes widened in confusion and anger. "What are you doing?" But Joe Hui didn't answer. He walked up to the front of the man's beloved Audi, took a deep breath and swung the wrench down onto the windshield. A thick, jagged line appeared, slicing across the glass. Joe Hui didn't stop there. He swung again, this time shattering the windshield completely. The glass splintered but didn't fall, leaving a mess of streaks and cracks across the car. Without missing a beat, he turned and smashed the hood with another blow, caving it in. The man's heart dropped. His beloved car, his pride and joy, was being destroyed right in front of him. "Stop, what are you doing?" he screamed, rushing forward to stop Joe Hui. Joe Hui, however, wasn't interested in stopping. He shoved the man aside with ease. "I've already paid for your car, what happens to it now is none of your business." Joe Hui then turned to the driver. "Master, I'll give you 50,000 yuan, help me destroy this car." The driver stood frozen, the amount of money almost overwhelming. He had to run for almost a year to earn that much, yet here it was, handed to him in an instant. After swallowing his nerves, the driver nodded. "All right, I'll do it." The driver took the wrench and climbed onto the Audi's roof, bringing the tool down with a loud clang. Each blow made dents appear all over the car's body, ruining it beyond recognition. The bystanders watched in disbelief. The car that had once gleamed with pride was now a hunk of twisted metal. They could only shake their heads in regret at the sight. But then, another man, apparently from the crowd, approached with a grin. "Hey, handsome brother, do you want me to smash the car too? I used to be a car mechanic, I'm really good at this stuff." Joe Hui raised an eyebrow, finding the offer amusing, but seeing how hard the driver was working, he decided to let the man join in. "Sure, you can join in, master, we'll split the 50,000 with him for 20,000 yuan." The crowd gasped, some muttering to themselves about their missed opportunity. The new mechanic jumped onto the car, hammering away at the roof with enthusiasm. Now there were two people smashing the Audi to pieces. The original owner, watching helplessly, clenched his fists. His eyes were filled with frustration and pain as he saw his beloved car being destroyed. He could do nothing but stand by, powerless to stop it. Time passed and the car's destruction continued. Joe Hui, satisfied with the damage, glanced at his watch. It was nearly noon and he still had to get to the hospital. He walked away, leaving the scene behind, and soon, a new car appeared to take him to his next destination. The passers-by continued to whisper, full of envy and confusion. Who is this guy? He just threw away 400,000 yuan like it was nothing, but he looks so ordinary aside from being a bit more handsome than most. Seriously, this is infuriating. If I had that money, I could never just throw it away like that, but to him, it's just another day. Zhou Hui had once again become the center of attention, the talk of the town. Arriving at the hospital, Zhou Hui rushed to the ward, a bag of fruit in hand. He had worked so hard in the past to try and cure his father's illness, but even with all his efforts, his father had only been able to stay in an ordinary, overcrowded ward. As he entered the ward, the air was thick with unpleasant smells, the sounds of 6 different patients filling the space. It was a far cry from what Zhou Hui had imagined for his father. Next to one of the beds, Auntie Chun, the daughter-in-law of another patient, was busy with chores. When she saw Zhou Hui, she greeted him warmly. "Little Hui, you're here, it's been a while, huh? Your dad's probably ready to give up at this point." Zhou Hui nodded quietly and moved past her, glancing around at the makeshift beds around the room. The sight made his stomach turn, the memory of a dinner he'd had a while ago flashing in his mind. His father, who had been through so much, was now stuck in this grim place. It pained him deeply. As he reached his father's bed, he saw his mother asleep beside him. Her hair, now half-white, was a stark reminder of the years of stress and worry. His heart ached at the sight of her face etched with worry, her voice hoarse from lack of rest. Zhou Hui gently placed a blanket over her, his eyes wet with emotion. She stirred and looked up, her expression weary. "Little Hui, why are you here? You've been working so hard." Zhou Hui fought back his tears. "Mom, let me see Dad." He felt a pang of guilt. When he had the means to help, he hadn't done enough. He hadn't been there when his father needed him most. His mother's voice was filled with pain. "You're doing so much, but you never come here. Why don't you take a break when you can?" Zhou Hui's heart broke even more. He had been so focused on his work and his rise in wealth that he had neglected his family. "Don't worry, Mom, we're not struggling anymore. I've landed a big project recently and I got a large bonus. We'll be able to afford the best treatment for Dad now." His mother blinked, stunned by the news. "Really, you're not joking?" Zhou Hui nodded, trying to hold back his emotions. "Don't worry, I'll arrange a private room for Dad." But his mother stopped him. No, this ward is fine. You've worked so hard, don't waste your money on something like that." Her words struck him to the core. Despite everything she had endured, she still didn't want to burden him further. Zhou Hui swallowed hard. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll make sure everything is taken care of." Zhou Hui's heart sank as he listened to Liu Zhu's words, feeling an overwhelming bitterness he couldn't quite shake. He struggled to find a response, unsure how to express the turmoil inside him. Suddenly, the sound of a loud, brash woman's voice rang out from outside the door. "Hey, let me ask, is Zhou Ming in this ward?" "Yeah, you're looking for Zhou Ming. Who are you?" Auntie Chun responded, her voice tinged with curiosity. "I'm his brother's wife," came the sharp reply. "Oh," Auntie Chun nodded, "then you can go in, the bed in the back is it." Zhou Hui didn't need to look, he already knew who it was. It had to be his wife, Wang Taohua. However, when Sun Ziyume overheard the conversation, her expression immediately shifted. A look of unease washed over her face and she quickly turned to Zhou Hui, her voice anxious. "Little Hui, it's noon, go buy me some food, I'm hungry." Zhou Hui instantly understood her unease. Wang Taohua's presence always meant trouble and Sun Ziyume wanted to get rid of her quickly. Zhou Hui gently held her hand. "Mom, don't worry." Just then the door creaked open and in walked a middle-aged woman with dark skin, dressed in a pink short-sleeved shirt and black pants, her hair tied up in a messy bun. The woman's eyes gleamed as she saw Zhou Hui and Sun Ziyume. "Sister-in-law Ziyume, you made it easy for me to find you. Say, why didn't you tell me the address clearly? It's better I asked Da Kui from the village first." Da Kui was Sun Ziyume's closest friend and often they would chat together over tea. Wang Taohua's voice was as loud as ever, as she entered the room with a plastic bag that barely contained a few cucumbers, tomatoes, and some wild peaches. "It looks like a mockery." Yeah, little Hui is also here. Look, I don't even know what I'm buying. I brought over some fruits and vegetables thinking my big brother loves cucumbers, Wang Taohua said with a grin. Sun Ziyume responded curtly, okay, her indifference clear as day. Wang Taohua, undeterred, squatted down to place the bag on the bedside table, but when she opened it, her eyes widened at the sight of the neatly packaged fruits within. Yo, sister-in-law, what is this? I've never seen this before, let me taste it for you, she exclaimed, grabbing a large mango from the bag. Zhou Hui couldn't help but roll his eyes. He already knew why Sun Ziyume kept her distance from Wang Taohua. The woman had long taken advantage of their family, never offering a penny when Zhou Ming fell ill. Now she was here to extract even more. Wang Taohua hesitated with the mango, licking her lips before turning to Zhou Hui. Little Hui, how do you eat this thing? Zhou Hui barely looked at her and coldly responded, eat with your mouth. Wang Taohua scowled, clearly unamused. Look at what you're saying, child, she muttered under her breath, then bit into the mango, her face contorted in disgust. Aya, why is this so astringent? What is this thing? Forget it, I'll just take it home for second uncle to eat. Zhou Hui's anger flared, but he remained silent. Sun Ziyume's face darkened as she watched Wang Taohua stuff the mango into her pocket. Wang Taohua, oblivious to the tension, smiled wide. I just came to see my big brother. Sun Ziyume, irritated beyond measure, replied, then you've seen him, now leave. Sister-in-law, don't be like this. Back then it was also because our family was poor. Otherwise, why wouldn't my blood brother lend you money for the doctor? We were still family then. Wang Taohua's tone dripped with feigned sympathy. Sun Ziyume's heart softened slightly at the mention of the past, but she quickly hardened. What exactly are you here for? Instead of answering directly, Wang Taohua sidled up to Zhou Hui. Yo, this child's clothes are really not bad. Looks like little Hui earns a lot in the city. Otherwise, why would he dress so well? Zhou Hui and Sun Ziyume exchanged confused glances, unable to understand her intention. What are you trying to say? Zhou Hui asked, irritated. Wang Taohua sat down on the bed next to Sun Ziyume, uninvited. Sister-in-law, our Daju has taken a fancy to a girl from the neighboring village. I was thinking about letting them get married. Sun Ziyume's expression softened for a moment. That's a good thing. But Wang Taohua's tone shifted to one of concern. The girl wants 50,000 yuan for the betrothal gift. We don't have that money and we don't have a house in the city either. Zhou Hui understood immediately. This was why Wang Taohua had shown up. Sun Ziyume's face tightened. Peach Blossom, we don't have any money, your brother is sick. Wang Taohua, however, was not deterred. I've already asked about it. Big brother's illness can't be cured, so why not lend me money for his treatment and I'll let Daju marry first. Zhou Hui's blood boiled, but Sun Ziyume, sensing the growing tension, held his hand, trying to calm him. Wang Taohua, seeing Sun Ziyume's hesitation, gathered her courage and continued. Since Zhou Hui works in the city and earns 10,000 yuan a month, I thought maybe he could help. Zhu Zhu and his wife could stay at your place for now. Zhou Hui was seething with anger. Aunt, you don't need to worry about this. I will take care of my mother and my father will get better. His voice was cold, firm. Sun Ziyume was equally furious, her anger spilling over. You've calculated everything so well, to drain us dry you're even willing to sacrifice your own brother's life. With that, Sun Ziyume physically shoved Wang Taohua toward the door. The onlookers, unsure whether to intervene, slowly dispersed, knowing better than to get involved in family matters. With one last angry shout from Wang Taohua, the doctor intervened and she left in a huff. As the door closed, Sun Ziyume sat down heavily by the bed, tears welling up in her eyes. Zhou Hui, his heart heavy, went over to comfort her. He had made a promise to himself, no matter what he would make sure his parents lived a good life from now on. Sun Ziyume wiped her tears away, looking up at Zhou Hui. Little Hui, your aunt won't let this go easily, we still owe her money. Zhou Hui stood there for a moment, holding the bank card in his hand, his eyes unwavering as he spoke calmly. Mom, don't worry. There's several 100,000 in this card, it's my bonus and commission from a while ago. The words hung in the air and Sun Ziyume froze, her hands shaking slightly as she took the card from him. She couldn't believe it, so much money, more than she could have imagined. Her breath caught in her chest, her eyes welling up with tears. Little Hui, is what you're saying true? Her voice was a mix of disbelief and overwhelming joy, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Zhou Hui nodded firmly, his voice steady. Amen. Sun Ziyume sighed deeply, her voice soft and filled with regret. Sigh, I have truly wronged you, working so hard every day. Zhou Hui glanced at her, a small smile on his face. Don't worry, Mom, our good days are coming. Sun Ziyume nodded, the burden of years of hardship seeming to lift slightly off her shoulders. Mom, I'll apply for a better ward for Dad, Zhou Hui said, his concern for his father clear. He looked around at the current ward. It wasn't that it wasn't adequate, but the noisy environment wasn't ideal for his father's recovery. Sun Ziyume hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice soft but insistent. Forget it, little Hui, there's nothing bad about living here, let's save some money. Zhou Hui understood her concern, but he was determined to make sure his father received the best care possible. He made his way to the reception desk. Hello, nurse, I'm the family member of the patient in Ward 106. I'd like to apply for a private ward. As he spoke, a doctor with large ears and a bulbous head walked past and overheard their conversation. The doctor stopped, glancing at Zhou Hui with a look of disdain. Ward 106, that's Zhou Ming's room. Zhou Hui nodded, his face tight with frustration. Yes, that's right, I'm his son. The doctor scoffed, eyeing Zhou Hui from head to toe. Forget it, do you know how much a single room costs per day? I'm aware of your family's situation. Zhou Hui's anger flared. He had expected some resistance, but this doctor's dismissive attitude was too much. He felt his blood boil as he fought to keep his composure. Ignoring the doctor, he turned to the nurse. What's the cost of a private ward? The nurse looked at her screen. The cheapest is 5,800, the average is 8,800, and the most expensive is the luxurious ward, which includes daily checkups. Zhou Hui's heart sank at the price. It was high, but for his father it was worth it. He clenched his jaw and spoke with determination. I'll take the luxurious ward. The nurse blinked in surprise. People who could afford luxurious wards were typically either wealthy officials or those with reimbursements, not someone like Zhou Hui. She didn't say anything but stared at him, unsure. The doctor, seeing this, sneered. Kid, don't bite off more than you can chew. How long do you think you can afford that kind of room? A day, 2 days? Zhou Hui's anger was close to boiling over, but he stayed silent. He needed to take care of his father, not get into a confrontation with this doctor. At that moment, the nurse cleared her throat. Sir, the patient Zhou Ming has an outstanding bill of 10,200 yuan in medical fees. How do you intend to pay for that? Zhou Hui's stomach churned. It was true, the money he had paid earlier had been exhausted. The doctor laughed, seeing an opportunity to humiliate him further. Haha, look at this, you can't even pay the medical fees and you think you can afford the best room. It's a miracle we haven't kicked you out already. Zhou Hui could no longer hold back. With a swift motion, he grabbed the doctor's wrist and twisted it, his anger making him strong in the moment. The doctor yelped in pain, but just as the situation escalated, a woman in a white coat hurried over. It was the hospital dean, Zhang Yanfeng, alerted by the commotion. What's going on, young man? If you have something to say it calmly, she said, approaching with concern. Zhou Hui took a step back, releasing the doctor's wrist. He sized up the woman, his frustration evident but controlled. You must be the principal? Zhang Yanfeng nodded, looking him up and down. Yes, what's the issue? Zhou Hui's voice was sharp but measured. I came to apply for the luxurious ward, but your doctor mocked me for it. Is that your hospital's rule? Zhang Yanfeng looked at Zhou Hui, sizing him up. Normally she wouldn't take someone like him seriously, but when she heard about the luxurious ward, her interest piqued. If he could afford that for a month, it would be a significant boost for the hospital's financials. Before she could respond, the doctor spoke again, his voice dripping with disdain. Principal, don't believe him. How can someone who can't even pay his medical fees afford such a ward? He's just a liar. Zhou Hui remained calm as he reached into his pocket, pulling out the bank card. Help me charge 500,000 yuan for medical fees and arrange for the luxurious ward for 2 months. Zhang Yanfeng froze in place. 500,000 yuan, the number seemed almost unreal. She looked at the nurse, who nodded with an expression of disbelief. Just as Liu Zipeng, the doctor, tried to scoff again, a voice echoed in the room. Ding, 150,000 yuan transferred. Liu Zipeng's face drained of color, his smug expression gone. Zhang Yanfeng was shocked as the realization hit her. This young man had just transferred a large sum of money right in front of them. Liu Zipeng tried to save face, but Zhang Yanfeng wasn't having it. She turned to him, her voice cold. Dr. Liu, where do you think you're going? Zhou Hui stood silently by, watching the unfolding drama with an unreadable expression. Zhang Yanfeng's voice was firm as she addressed Liu Zipeng. Your behavior is unacceptable. From today onwards you are suspended from your duties. Liu Zipeng's face turned white and he quickly pleaded for forgiveness, but it was too late. Zhang Yanfeng was already turning her attention to Zhou Hui. I doubt your ability to work. From today onwards you will be suspended from your duties. Zhang Yanfeng's words rang out like a final judgment. The room fell silent, the weight of her decision settling on everyone. Liu Zipeng, humiliated and defeated, ran off, only to be stopped by the principal. Mr. Zhou, I was wrong, I couldn't recognize you before, please forgive me, he said, bowing his head in apology. Zhou Hui stood there, seething with anger as Liu Zipeng tried to save face with his insincere words. The doctor's attempts at belittling him only fueled the fire within him, but Zhou Hui remained calm, determined to show that things had changed. As Zhou Hui thought about the past, the contrast between then and now hit him hard. He used to struggle just to pay for his father's medical fees, living paycheck to paycheck. But now he had the means to give his parents the best of everything. He wanted to show them the fruits of his hard work and success. Just then the sound of movement came from the sick room and Sun Ziumei appeared in the hallway. The moment she laid eyes on the scene, her gaze fell on Liu Zipeng clinging to Zhou Hui's leg and her suspicions grew. Before she could ask anything, Zhang Yanfeng, the hospital dean, quickly approached her and praised her son. You must be Mr. Zhou's mother, your son is truly amazing, Zhang Yanfeng said with enthusiasm. Sun Ziumei beamed with pride, but her joy faded slightly when she saw the doctor still clinging to her son. Before Liu Zipeng could reach her, Zhou Hui saw through his intentions and grabbed him. Mom, don't worry, I'm just handling some things with the principal. You go back to the ward, Zhou Hui said reassuringly. Sun Ziumei nodded, still unsure but trusting her son's words. She returned to the room and Zhou Hui turned to the dean. Principal Zhang, I don't want to see him again, you know what I mean, Zhou Hui said, his voice cold and firm. Zhang Yanfeng, having no choice, nodded and addressed Liu Zipeng sternly. Okay, Mr. Zhou, don't worry, I will make sure you are satisfied. Liu Zipeng, get lost. Liu Zipeng, humiliated, was dragged away by the principal and Zhou Hui's anger slowly subsided. The nurse who had been present, having witnessed everything, stood stunned. She had never imagined Zhou Hui's request for a luxury ward was genuine. She had laughed at him earlier, only to now find herself in the presence of someone with immense financial power. Zhou Hui, unfazed, turned to the nurse. When can we move to the luxury ward? The nurse, still processing the situation, checked the system and replied, it will be ready by this afternoon. The room needs cleaning. That's fine, Zhou Hui said, then turned to Sun Ziumei. Mom, you must be hungry, I'll go buy you something to eat. Sun Ziumei nodded, still in awe of her son's confidence and newfound wealth. Zhou Hui took out his phone and made a call. Hello, Manager Li. Manager Li's voice was filled with excitement when he answered. Mr. Zhou, what a pleasant surprise. Do you want to come over for dinner? I've been saving your seat. No, I need you to send some food to room 106, inpatient department, Shanghai Hospital, Zhou Hui instructed. Of course, I'll be there in no time, Manager Li replied eagerly. Within half an hour, Manager Li arrived at the hospital pushing a small cart with a lid covering the food. The moment he opened it, dry ice billowed from the dish, revealing a perfectly cooked steak, seafood and abalone all arranged atop a block of ice. Sun Ziumei's eyes widened in shock as she stared at the extravagant meal. How much does this cost? She asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Zhou Hui winked and reassured her, don't worry, it's not expensive. Manager Li quickly added, Madam, your son helped me out a lot before, this meal is on me. Sun Ziumei's pride swelled even more as she realized her son had taken care of everything. This was the first time she'd experienced such fine dining and she marveled at the food in front of her. Just then, the family from the nearby bed entered and Sun Ziumei frowned at the sight of Liu Jing, who had a knack for causing trouble. Liu Jing's eyes widened in envy as she saw the foreign chef cooking for Zhou Hui and his mother. Liu Jing's jealousy bubbled over. What is this, the end of my days? Yesterday I was eating dry steamed buns and today you're feasting like royalty, she sneered. Sun Ziumei snapped back, we have what we deserve. My son is capable, unlike some people who can't even afford their own medical bills. Liu Jing shot back, well, if you're so capable, why don't you go live in a luxury ward? Don't act like a big shot in a place like this. Before Zhou Hui could respond, Principal Zhang entered with several nurses and doctors in tow. Mr. Zhou, the luxury ward is ready. We've already arranged everything for you, Zhang Yanfeng said, bowing respectfully. Zhou Hui nodded and the hospital staff began moving his things to the new room. Liu Jing, standing by, couldn't believe her eyes. The reality of Zhou Hui's newfound status was more than she could comprehend. As they moved out, Liu Jing's earlier mocking words hung in the air, but no one took her seriously. All eyes were on Zhou Hui, the man who had turned the hospital's fortunes around with just a swipe of his card. Liu Jing stood there stunned as the luxury ward staff moved away. The weight of her jealousy sank in as she realized the power that Zhou Hui now wielded, power she could never have imagined.